Hello everyone and welcome to our latest session. Today first and foremost I want to remind you that the end of the year is coming very quickly. As we can see here, we're in week 13. There's very little time remaining before our final exam. We've moved at a relatively straightforward progression through the semester, but if you've fallen behind, you're running out of time to catch up. Hopefully that's not the case. If you are having problems, you can contact me. I'm not sure, however, how much help I will be. The reason I made videos is to give you a reference point. Because we're not teaching face-to-face, it is difficult in many ways for me to help you more than through the videos I've already made. So without further ado, let's begin. The first thing you're going to do today is submit your homework assignment. You can submit your homework assignment to this email address, jessecull@hotmail.com. As I said in the instructions, you should have 4 files included: a screenshot of your QM file, a screenshot of your Excel file, and your Excel file. In both the Excel and QM files, the project name should be you and your partner's names and student numbers, as I said. All right, so hopefully everybody's clear on that. I'm going to give you 15 minutes from now to do that. When I come back in 15 minutes, that will be the end of the submission period. Anything after that will be considered late. If you have problems, please contact me. I will be back in 15 minutes. jessecull@hotmail.com. Please submit all 4 total files there. All right, everyone, that's been about 15 minutes. What we're going to do now is we're going to do a couple questions. The big thing is we're going to revisit 2 variable questions. Again, if you had any problems submitting your homework, hopefully you contacted me. It is now officially too late if you have not contacted me, but you can still submit your homework late. So after we do that, let's move on to a couple questions. One we'll do in class and one we'll do for homework. So as I said, we're going to look at 2 variable questions. Our final exam is coming soon. And before we focus on 3 variable questions at the end of the course, I'd like to revisit one final time 2 variable questions. They should be relatively easy at this point. The only thing that might be complicated is situations where we might have a scenario where you have to manipulate the information given you in order to properly write it into its acceptable form for the computer programs, QM and Microsoft Excel. So let's begin. Our first problem, Zara Store in the United States imports designer-inspired clothes that it sells from suppliers in China and Brazil. Zara estimates that it will have 45 orders in a year, and it must arrange to transport orders by container ships with shippers in Hong Kong and Buenos Aires. About 10% of the annual orders from the shipper in Hong Kong are damaged, and the shipper in Buenos Aires damages about 4% of all orders annually. Zara wants to receive no more than 3 damaged orders each year. Zara does not want to be dependent on suppliers from just one country, so it wants to receive at least 25% of its orders from each country. It costs $3,700 to order from China and $5,100 to order from Brazil. Zara wants to know how many orders to ship from each port to minimize costs. So to begin, we're trying to minimize costs. We see that in the final sentence. So it's minimizes Z is equal to 3,700 X1, which is China, and 5,100 X2, which is orders from Brazil. Now, one thing we have to be aware of in this question is that several times the way the question is worded, China and Brazil are rearranged. It lists China first sometimes and Brazil first sometimes. So in that scenario, we just have to be careful that everything's in the correct order. So let's look at our constraints. The first one is that we have 45 orders in a year. That means X1, the number we ship from China, and X2, the amount we ship from Brazil, must be equal to, not less than or equal to, not greater than or equal to, but must be equal to 45. Our second constraint, 10% of orders from China and 4% from Brazil are damaged. So 0.90 X1 plus 0.96 X2 must be less than or equal to 42, because we have 3 damaged orders. If it's more than 42, we have more than 3 damaged orders, and that is unacceptable. Finally, it wants to receive at least 25% of its orders from each country. That means X1 must be greater than or equal to 25, and X2 must be greater than or equal to 25. So we have 4 constraints in this problem. When everything is rearranged correctly, we have our standard problem formulation right here. Minimize Z is equal to 3,700 X1 plus 5,100 X2, subject to these 4 ideas. X1 plus X2 is 45 total orders. 0.90 X1 plus 0.96 X2 is less than or equal to 42, which is our maximum acceptable level of orders. X1 is greater than or equal to 11.25. X2 is greater than or equal to 11.25. Now, of course, 11.25 orders is impossible in the real world, but that's not something that we deal with in this course. That's something we deal with in the continuation managerial decision making. For now, we're going to assume, just for simplicity's sake, that partial orders are acceptable. So let's move on. Let me open up QM. We click on Module. We click on Linear Programming. We open a new file. We're going to title it our Zara example. We know we have 4 constraints, as we just saw, and we know we have 2 variables. We're also trying to minimize our costs, our shipping costs. So we click OK. First thing we're going to do is lengthen our columns just for clarity. And we'll do this one as well. So then we start relabeling. The first one is China or Hong Kong. The second, Brazil or Buenos Aires. We minimize if Hong Kong is $3,700 and Buenos Aires is $5,100. Our first constraint is total orders. Our second constraint is minimum acceptable orders. Our third constraint is minimum China order. And our fourth constraint is minimum Brazil order. So our total orders we know is X1 is 1, X2 is 0, and it must be equal to 45. If we don't have it equal to, we may get less or more than we require, and we only require 45. No other number is acceptable. For minimum acceptable orders, we have 0.90. Nope. And 0.96 must be greater than or equal to 42. Our minimum China order, so we make this 1, must be greater than or equal to 11.25. And 1, our minimum Brazil order, must be greater than or equal to 11.25. We hit solve once we've entered all of the relevant information. And we get this information. So we see here that we are ordering 20 from China and 25 from Brazil, which will cost us $201,500. That is our total acceptable or our optimal solution. We want to split our orders between the 2 countries, 20 from China, 25 from Brazil, which will cost us $201,500, but that is the minimum amount we can spend to get $4,500 or to get 45 total orders with these conditions. All right, let me save this file. And close QM. Next, we're going to do it one more time in Microsoft Excel. Zara example. Our 2 possibilities. I guess one more time. Is China, Brazil. China is $3,700. Brazil is $5,100. Then we're going to enter our requirements. Our first is total orders. Our second, minimum acceptable orders. Minimum China orders. Minimum Brazil orders. We're going to click here, just lengthen it just for simplicity's sake. Now we're going to come over here, and this is where we enter our usage, and here we're going to enter our formula to determine our actual numbers. Over here, available, 45, 42, 11.25, 11.25. And we know this is equal to, it thinks I'm entering a formula. Greater than or equal to, greater than or equal to, greater than or equal to. We can't enter our usage information formulas yet, but we can enter this over here. So as before, 1 and 1, 0.90, 0.96. Minimal China orders is 1 and 1. So all of the information's been entered appropriately. We have to come down here, not necessarily here, but we have to enter somewhere else in the spreadsheet. China, Brazil, again only 2 because we have only 2 decision variables, and our final information is cost. Now we can begin entering our information, so equal here times the number of products from China plus here times the number of products from Brazil. One more time. And this one is a little easier, just simply 1 times the number of products from China, 1 times the number of products from Brazil. The last thing we have to do is enter our cost formula. And to do that, we have our total number of products from China times the costs from China plus total number of shipments from Brazil times the cost from Brazil. So this is exactly the same as we have done a dozen times now. This shouldn't be anything that requires explanations. It should be very easy for you to do now. But in the scenario where it's not, please review the old videos. If there's some small thing that you're unclear of, please contact me, because this should be very easy at this point. So we click on Data, over to our Solver add-in. Our set objective we find in B17. We're trying to minimize. The cells that we are experimenting with are B14 and B15. We add our 4 constraints. The first one, D7 must be equal to F7. D8 must be greater than or equal to F8. D9 must be greater than or equal to F9. And finally, D10 must be greater than or equal to F10. We hit OK. We change it to simplex LP as we always do, and we click the Solve button. All conditions are satisfied. Solver found a solution. All constraints and optimality conditions are satisfied. We click OK, and we have exactly the same information we had last time. So we've successfully solved both of these problems. There should be zero problem now. Hopefully everybody is clear. I'm going to leave you with a homework problem to complete. You do not have to submit it as always, but it will be relevant to our attendance quiz. I will address you before the end of class. This is our two-variable revisitation. It's an investment problem. Good luck, and I will revisit this at the 40-minute mark. If you have questions, as always, please contact me. This problem will be relevant to your attendance quiz. All right, everyone. Hopefully you've had no problems with this. We'll continue in the next session where we'll review how to solve this problem, as well as looking at another couple problems, both two variable problems, because we're going to continue with that. Again, thank you for listening. Hopefully you've had no problems submitting your homework or with this questions, and I'll see you in our next session.